Hi, you're watching a special broadcast. For now, one thing is certain, that both sides will discuss the upcoming meeting between US President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi at the G20 summit in Osaka in Japan later this week, perhaps turning the heat a few notches down before that big meeting. Let's talk about what this meeting means for India and the United States and the ties going forward. Joining me here in the studio is Ambassador Shiv Shankar Mukherjee, who's served as the Indian ambassador to the United Kingdom as well as Nepal, apart from holding other high-profile posts. Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, foreign affairs expert, also professor and dean at the Jindal School of International Affairs, and Kamaraga, expert on international affairs, will be joining me shortly. Thank you very much. Dr. Chaulia, the fact that Mike Pompeo will be in India, he is essentially here, that's what we're hearing, to lay the groundwork of that meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi in Osaka in Japan. That does give us an idea about how important that meeting is going to be, doesn't it? This comes as a fifth meeting between the two leaders in ever since Prime Minister Modi has assumed office, and similarly Mr. Trump.
Yes, Sana, indeed, the summit level meeting is the most important. And Pompeo's India visit is obviously trying to lay the groundwork for the summit. And the problem, of course, with the summit level meetings between Prime Minister Modi and President Trump has been the obvious lack of the same
warmth and chemistry we saw between Modi and Obama. And this has to do with the drastic nature of the change that Trump has brought about in American diplomacy and the worldview and the very outlook towards the international arena. So in the past, be it George W. Bush or Barack Obama, they had a sense that India is a democracy and a counterweight to authoritarian China, and also a country that could play a very pivotal role in regional stability and all that. But with Trump, as you've mentioned, trade and commerce have come center stage. And while the relationship is good in the sense that if you look at the volumes, 150 billion annual volume of bilateral trade is not a small figure. So the fact that it's been growing is a good news, but Trump has thrown spanners. And if the effect of the retaliatory tariffs continues down the line without any settlement or a bilateral deal with the US on trade, I'm afraid that the trade volumes will start shrinking from this year onwards. And that's not good news. And as far as the defense technology and trade and other things go, people say that it's expanding, but then we need to see big projects and joint development of weaponry, those kind of things. Those are still yet to come, fructify. So if you look at it overall, yes.
Okay, Dr. Chaulia, we'll delve deeper into all of these issues. Just hang on. But thank you for those opening comments, Dr. Chaulia. The tensions that we're seeing, Dr. Chaulia, between Iran and the United States essentially have geopolitical but also geo-economic impact to a very large extent. How do you see this playing out for India? Would you like to add anything? What's your perspective on what's going on? I mean, the different versions when it comes to the shooting down of the drone, of the US spy drone a couple of days ago. After that, Donald Trump going in for an attack but calling it off just before any shots were fired. And then we see more economic, more brutal sanctions, as he calls it. So tensions continue to prevail. And India is going in for this very crucial meeting in Osaka in Japan at the G20.
Well, Sana, a lot of countries, especially in Asia, are on the hook with the US-Iran tensions because of the oil price market, and the potential of a sudden spike in oil prices. In fact, the Japanese, which are also big importers of oil from the Middle East, try to mediate. Shinzo Abe even offered to tamp down the tensions between Iran and the US, and Trump impolitely said, I don't need any such intervention. So I think the problem is that South Korea, Japan, China, and India, we are all heavily dependent on stability in the Straits of Hormuz, because that's where the bulk of our oil comes from. And it's very important that we put in a collective appeal to Trump to actually downsize the escalation, and to roll it back. Sometimes when we have tensions between India and Pakistan, the Americans adopt this, high moral posture saying we want, dialing down of tensions and we want restraint on all sides. But this is much bigger. This is like the Persian Gulf. is the crucial waterway, geo-economic waterway for all of Asia and for our economic growth. So I think we must impress upon Trump at the G20 especially. I would think that Prime Minister Modi should team up with Xi Jinping, with Shinzo Abe, and with Moon Jae-in, the three other Asian leaders, and along with the Europeans.
Right.
Nobody wants war. I think Trump himself doesn't want war, but there are people in his government, so-called globalists and neoconservatives like John Bolton. Even
only if Trump would listen, Dr. Chaulia. Only if Donald Trump would listen, but I hear you. Okay. Kamar Agha, we also must understand when it comes to Iran, Mike Pompeo. All right, Dr. Chaulia. All right. Quickly coming back to you, Dr. Chaulia. Should India continue to pay the price for US's stance when it comes to other countries, for instance, Russia, China, Iran, because we see that increasingly happening? What can India do to make itself very, very clear that, look, our ties with, let's say, Russia are 7 decades old. We cannot disturb that just because you say so.
Yeah, Sana, we've done that to an extent. We have not backtracked on S-400 purchase. In fact, even Turkey, which is a NATO ally, has not backtracked on S-400 purchase, even though the Americans applied tremendous pressure and even economic warfare on Turkey. So I think, one of the things we need to do psychologically is to re-estimate the power and the influence of the United States. There are a lot of people in India who are caught in a time warp of the 1990s and, the early 2000s, and who believe that, the US has to be somehow pleased or else, they'll come down like a ton of bricks on us. Actually, that's not so, and we have our own ambitions to be a major power in the world, and we are not actually going to bandwagon to the United States or be a junior partner to them. I think we're very clear, our red lines have been drawn. On defense trade and such things, if there is a mutually beneficial deal, we are willing to buy more. But I think more important is the co-production and the joint manufacturing, which is not really taken off. And that's an area I think Pompeo will be discussing closely on this visit. But more important for us, I think, is overall to say, look, one strategy is to simply wait out Trump, either 2020 or 2024. But if he's a two-term president, then we are looking at other options. We need to diversify our trade partners. We need to also relook our relationship with the other non-Western powers. And I think Prime Minister Modi has already done that with China, starting with the Wuhan process. And that stability has helped us because we don't want simultaneous tensions with both the great powers, China and the US. And on the other hand, with Russia, I think we're very steadfast and we're going to continue doing that. And, if it comes at a cost where the Americans look at us with suspicion or as, then so be it. At the end of the day, it's a toss-up between, being an independent power, as Kamar Raga was saying, and being, subordinate. And we are certainly not subordinate. We are on the way up under a very powerful political leader like Mr. Modi. And I think we're going to assert ourselves in our own way. While we would want to maintain this relationship, you
summed it up pretty well, Dr. Chaulia. But very important, this upcoming visit of the US Secretary of State. All eyes will be on Mike Pompeo. Thank you so much, Ambassador Mukherjee, Mr. Kamar Raga and Dr. Chaulia for joining me on this very special edition. A short break. More news on the other side.